Hi there everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Now, today's video on Dissidia Opera Omnia is going to be the first in a weekly series that I plan to do that's kind of like an evolution of my should you pull videos from before I went to go and work for Square. It's going to be a recommendation on how to spend your resources over the coming week. So while people have been expecting me to kind of go back to doing that same sort of thing again, I've actually wanted to change it up so that, because there's so many other content creators that are doing a fantastic job of doing a should you pull video, but equally I still want to be able to give you guys advice and give you guys my opinions on characters that are coming up and how they're going to perform and whether I would spend ingots on them, things like that, because I know that that's something that people liked from me originally. So I'm doing it in a slightly different way. So at the beginning of each week, I'm going to go over the banners that are coming up in that week, which you can then refer back to as a banner is released or things like that. You can always come back to this point in the video and then you can just have a look at what's coming up, whether you should be saving for something next week, whether you should be saving for something at the end of the week, or whether you should just go straight in for the first banner that arrives in the week. And then you'll be able to see how I would spend my resources and, you know, hopefully give you guys a bit of advice on how you could spend yours or not spend them at all. So if that's something that you're interested in, then stay tuned and keep on watching. We have two banners to talk about this week. We have Lulu and Jecht's banner with Lulu's Lost Chapter, and we also have Kam'lanaut's event, which will feature Kam'lanaut and Shantotto's realizations. So again, if that's something that you're interested in, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Don't forget to check out all of my social media links in the description box below, including my Twitter, which I've actually been a lot more active on recently. I'm really enjoying Twitter at the moment. My Twitch channel, which I am overhauling. I have been quite quiet on Twitch, but as you can see with the visual upgrades I've made to my videos and things like that, I've actually been doing a similar sort of thing when it comes to my Twitch, when it comes to my Patreon, when it comes to my Discord, all sorts of things. I've been doing a complete facelift when it comes to anything I do when it comes to content creation. So definitely come and check me out on there, as we're having a look at the FF7 remake demo at the moment, and that's very exciting for a lot of us, myself included, and it's something that I've been really eagerly awaiting. So let's go and have a look at that on Twitch as well. Don't forget to check out DissidiaDB.com. That's a website I've been using very frequently since I started making videos on Dissidia. So honestly, go and give Rem all your support. He's gone and like overhauled a lot of the things he's done on the website visually, and they're all really helpful to everybody. So I definitely encourage going to go and look at that. And of course, I can't forget to mention all the other Dissidia content creators that are out there. So definitely check them out as well, and I'll leave all the names of people you can look for, and obviously if there are any that I don't have, then feel free to let me know and I will add them straight away. So the way that this is going to work is I'm going to go over each of the characters that have an EX featured that are coming out over the next week. So in this particular case, there's going to be 4 of them, which are going to be Jecht, Lulu, Shantotto and Kam'lanaut. And we're going to go through what their realizations do, have a quick look at their kit for anyone who may not know what it is, and basically give recommendations on where your resources, your tickets, your gems, your ingots, your books, all of that stuff should be going this week, or whether you should be using them at all. Now, I've decided to not talk about characters on a banner that don't have an EX featured, because at this point in time for Chaos, things like that, no one is using characters that don't have an EX, except maybe Afmal on the odd occasion. I have some people use Afmal, but I mean, when she comes back with her EX, we can talk about her then. But let's go into Jecht off the bat. Now, Fire is the name of the game when it comes to this banner, which is going to be Lulu and Jecht's banner on Lulu's Lost Chapter. And Jecht just hits really, really hard, and that's the whole point of his kit. So what he does get out of this, out of his level 70, things like that, we've got a recovery for his Jecht Slash, which, as we know from his original kit, he will repeat if he gets above a certain threshold of his bravery. If he hits over 100% of his max bravery, which honestly he should be doing if you're going to use Jecht, you get to use Jecht Slash a second time for free. And then his Jecht Slash just ups his attack, it makes it so it hits harder. It's just a generally useful like move to have, but it's not quite the reason that you use it. It's generally you're wanting to use Jecht Slash a lot of the time. So having Jecht Slash recovery, which will also, after the use of his Bloomstone and his level 70 passive, will also increase his Brave Overflow. So it's actually quite nice, and he actually gets 3 uses of this once he's got his Bloomstone and everything. So 3 extra Jecht Slashes is actually very nice. And then looking at his EX originally, Meteor Shot was just a very large brave HP attack that hit really hard and gave him a buff that made it so that he could attack again for free if he broke something. So it's very similar to Lightning's EX. So if you break something, you get a free turn straight afterwards, and you can then continue this for next 6 turns. If you obviously manage to break something for the next 6 turns, then it means that by the time you've got that, you've then be able to use Meteor Shot again, and this regenerates his ultimate resolve buff, which gives him the ability to continue to take free turns. So basically, the whole point of him is damage, and then his realization will also make it so that he gets this buff at the beginning of the quest. So he gets all of the things he would have gotten from his Meteor Shot at the beginning of the quest. And not only that, he also gets his EX maxed out at the start, and as we've seen with certain other characters like Y'shtola and Onion Knight and people like that, it's a really nice thing to have. Even Cryle benefits greatly from this. And then at 3 ingots, he'll also get to execute it twice, but in one shot. So as opposed to it being a large number of hits and then a single HP attack, it's instead 2 4-hit brave HP attacks, which is most definitely better, because if you've got too much bravery from a support or something like that, his brave regen is actually very strong as well. So you do end up with a lot of bravery at the start of your turn. You're not going to leak bravery, what we call leaking bravery. You'll get the words out in a moment. When you're leaking bravery, it means that you've got too much bravery, and despite your brave overflow, you're dealing brave hits, but you're not gaining any bravery, and therefore dealing less damage. So when an attack is split like this, like Squalls or Jechts, you're less likely for that to happen. So this is definitely a benefit. My issue with Jecht is that he's very selfish. He fills a role that is there to just deal damage. He doesn't provide anything to the party, he only provides buffs to himself. He hits extremely hard, don't get me wrong, and if you're pairing him up with Lulu, he does fire damage. So some of his attacks are fire based, which is fantastic. So you're going to be able to deal, take advantage of the fire in peril, but equally Lulu kind of grants fire to everybody anyway, so you don't really need that. I personally believe that Onion Knight is a better choice to pull for than Jecht, because while Onion Knight still deals crazy amounts of damage, he does so in a different way, and he still provides the party benefits as well through his Forbidden Lands power buff, through his Crystal 65 ability where he enchants the party with ice and then imperils ice. So he kind of, to me, is like a hybridization of Jecht and Lulu, because Blade Torrent deals just as much damage as Meteor Shot can, and alright, he doesn't get the free turns that Jecht does, but he does provide the party with more brave overflow, things like that, things that are very valuable to a party within a damage dealer. So I already have Jecht EX, so I'm not saying this as a point of don't pull for him. If he's a good character, but he's not the character I'm looking forward to spending my ingots on right now. Now moving into Lulu. Lulu is a slightly different story. If you have a look at what her kit was originally, her whole shtick was basically providing fire resist down to your opponents so that they would take more fire damage. And the unfortunate thing with Lulu is that she's one of these stack-based characters which generally have to ramp up a while before they can get to where they need to be, and then she does more once she's hit those stacks. But with Lulu, once she hits those Dollmaster stacks and she gets to the maximum she wants to be, she puts out some work. Hard. So once you've built up her stacks, you get a Stinger Mog plus, Fire Member plus, and you get more and more and more damage. And as you keep going, you also get sort of more benefits to the party, like Fire Enchant, things like that. But the thing that we want to be talking about when it comes to this particular banner is what her 65 passive brings and what her EX brings. So her 65 crystal ability is weak damage up all, which when you look at it from this point of view, it's actually not that amazing. It slightly raises weakness damage per 33 turns. It's good because it's, if you've enchanted your party with fire and you've imperiled fire on your opponents, you're going to be doing more damage, and that does make a massive difference. Cryle showed us that. And then her Bloomstone will make it so that she gets another use out of this and that it lasts for longer. But she also, with her Crystal 70 passive, also makes it so that it gets more Brave Overflow to the party, which is really nice. Like, anything that increases Brave Overflow to your party is valuable. The fact that this increases your damage and increases your Brave Overflow for your party, it's really strong. That's a party-wide damage buff and max brave buff. You can't really ask for much more when it comes to a Crystal 65 ability. So honestly, this is really good. But her EX ability is also very strong. So realistically, you're not going to be using this that frequently unless you've already hit the Dollmaster stacks to max. But for Arc of Fury, it deals 3 Brave HP attacks, and they're split evenly, which, I mean, HP damage split evenly is fine, but we've had a lot of like 100% AoE damage abilities recently, so we're looking at characters like Aranea, and you know, it could be better. However, when you get Dollmaster at 5 stacks, it becomes 5 AoE Brave HP attacks, and it's like, do you know what? Splitting the damage evenly is fine, because that's a lot of damage. And then she also gets Alluring Mage for 3 turns, which raises her max bravery, but also grants Fire Enchant to the entire party. And that's really useful, because she's already doing the, you know, the imperils and things like that. The fact that her EX, which is a recurring event, or a recurring attack, is re-granting Fire Enchant to your party. If your opponent is weak to fire, then you're just going to obliterate it. Or like, because of the way that imperiling works as well now, even if they resist magic, we've seen this with gold bears, even if they resist magic, Lulu's still going to deal an absolute butt ton of damage to them, because resisting taking the resistance down for fire actually takes precedence over everything else. So even if they, as long as they don't outwardly resist fire or absorb fire, you're pretty safe to take Lulu to a lot of things. But her realization's actually pretty good as well, because it's not as sort of potent as some of the ones that we've seen. Like, it's, you know, you're not going to get up your EX max straight away, but you get Alluring Mage at the beginning, so you come in with a Fire Enchant to your party, so you'll just start with the Moomba, and then you'd end up like imperiling fire straight away, and then, or sorry, the Stingamog, and then you've got Fire Enchant and the Imperil from the beginning. And she also starts with 2 stacks of Dollmaster, so she doesn't take quite as long to get to the 5 stacks, which is really nice. And then you just gonna get more damage. She can get more. She can get Brave Overflow from her attack, which, to be honest, unless you're hitting 3 enemies at 9999 per hit each time, it's not like 120% isn't a lot, but it does go a long way, especially if you combine it with her Crystal 65 attack, if you combine it with other party buffs. So, you know, anyone that has anything like that, it's going to be really, really useful. And then her sphere, which I didn't actually cover when it comes to Jecht, her sphere is just, when you hit a target's weakness, it raises initial bravery and max bravery by 10% for 3 turns. It's actually pretty good. It's not the best sphere out there, but it's a pretty good one, because you're going to hit a weakness, because if you're not going to hit a weakness, then you shouldn't be bringing Lulu. It's the simple fact. And then Jecht sphere, which I will quickly go over because I didn't already talk about it because I was silly, is when dealing a critical hit, it raises initial bravery and attack by 10% for 3 turns. Now, this is good for Jecht and Zac as well, you know, because if you're hitting criticals, you're going to be hitting criticals, because if you hit a broken enemy, you always hit criticals. So it's like, it's not really a thing, but, you know, initial bravery and attack by 10% is really good for Jecht, because it means that his bravery gen from his ultimate resolve ability is really good, and Zac is somebody that would really benefit from this, because it's increasing the shield threshold for his apocalypse attack, and it's increasing his attack. So honestly, this banner is good. If you don't own either of these EXs, it's a decent banner to pull on. I'm not going to go too heavily on it because I already have Jecht, and I have Onion Knight, because that's changed since Friday. I now have Onion Knight and Yuri, so I kind of have my imperiled base covered, so I wouldn't worry too much about Lulu. But if you don't have any of those characters, then Lulu is very strong, and Jecht does hit really hard. So honestly, it's a good banner. It's not an I absolutely must pull on this banner type deal. So now we come to Shantotto. Now, Shantotto in this game has always been weird. She got her rework, and when she first got her EX, she got her rework at level 70. She's one of the first characters to get one, and it was okay. It wasn't amazing. You know, she has a lot of very strange things. Obviously, we can ignore Salvation Scythe and Vidornir because they are her limited weapon and her burst weapon, which we're not going to see for quite some time. But she still kind of has this shtick where she's got to get hurt before she can really do anything, and unfortunately this also carries over to Kam'lanaut, because in my last video I said that Kam'lanaut was really good, but I misread some of his stuff, so I will go over that when I get to him. But he does, Shantotto does get more out of the things that she used to. She's still a really good damage dealer, and her niche is again in line with the whole imperil thing, but she does it in a way that no other character can, so that does at least warrant some attention. She, you know, her Accursed Gaze debuff is really nice as well. It's poison and lowers defense, and it's framed, so it's hard to get rid of. It's just a nice thing. She gets rage from the beginning, and as long as she's taking some damage in some aspects, she's going to continue to have her rage mode. So her attacks are decent. Her level 65 ability is alright. It's weakness damage, but it's only to her, which is a bit of a pain. And her Bloomstone makes it so that it lasts longer and she gets another use out of it. And then her level 70 does raise her own Brave Overflow, which is, it's fine, but when you compare it to Lulu, who's doing that for the entire party, it's not quite as strong. But looking at Levitain, or Divine Malison rather, which is her EX attack, you get Divine Malison as a debuff. Now this lowers Fire, Thunder, Wind and Holy resistance. And it's nice. The recast rate on it's really good, and you know, it hits relatively hard. It doesn't have a massive overflow, you know, as it is, or anything like that. But when it gets its realization, the overflow does come into it, and it also adds Ice, Water, Earth and Dark resist down effects to the Divine Malison debuff. So no matter what element you're using, they are weak to it. If you use Divine Malison on it, it becomes an AoE attack as well, and this is at 0 out of 3. So I actually quite like this as something you can put 0 out of 3 and just put a book into, and then you've got it. Because what you actually want from Shantotto is the mass imperil, because that is going to increase your damage output quite significantly, and it means you can fit onto a large variety of teams. However, she doesn't really do that much for the party either. She is quite selfish, apart from the Divine Malison debuff. If you've taken damage or you're at HP minus or less than 50%, or you've got rage active, you get the Rage Divine Malison, which is where it becomes AoE and you deal more damage, and that means that everything gets the Divine Malison. But the problem I have with Shantotto is that she still needs to have these stipulations and have these various different, you know, rules on whether she can use her attacks or not, and the same thing carries over to Kam'lanaut as well. However, when you get her 2 out of 3 ingots, she inflicts a Accursed Gaze again. She gets, you know, well, a lot of her buffs straight away. She gets Peerless Power, which is a new buff, which increases her max overflow limit, which we always like. Max overflow limit is always good. Attack goes up, the 2 stats realistically you want. She gets that when she starts the quest, and she also gets a Brave Attack ++ and an HP Attack ++, which makes her Rage mode last pretty much indefinitely, which is a huge deal. That really elevates Shantotto from being, she's alright, to, yeah, do you know what, she's pretty good. I really like Shantotto as a character, and I really enjoy the fact that she's less reliant on having rage and having to take damage than she was because of this buff. So if you're going to go for her, then you're gonna want to put at least 2 ingots into her. She can work with 0 out of 3, but as with every character now, 3 out of 3 is always obviously going to be the best mark. She does, you know, if you 3 out of 3, it means that regular Divine Malison will deal the splash damage as well, and that Rage Divine Malison gets more damage generally. So to be honest with you, like all it does is take away one of the negatives, which is the fact that regular Divine Malison isn't AoE. So the problem I have with Shantotto is that there's too many rules on what she does and doesn't do. She's a good character, and Divine Malison's debuff is really valuable. You know, being able to imperil everything at once is really nice. But equally, why put so much resources into a character that has all these rules when you could put them into another one that doesn't? Okay, so let's talk about Kam'lanaut. So Shantotto has a little bit of the whole, you know, you have to fulfill all these stipulations and conditions for her to be at her maximum potential. She ain't got nothing on Kam'lanaut. Kam'lanaut is complicated, and honestly, to give you like a little bit of a spoiler now, he's not worth the trouble. So what he does is he works off of granting himself all these framed buffs and, you know, giving framed debuffs and stuff like that, but they all come off of like auras that reduce your opponent's attack and magic attack. But the way that you do it is that you have to use his skills in a certain order in order to grant himself Esoteric Region first, which is a frame buff that lowers enemy attack and magic attack down. You need to get that to 5 stacks, and then use Esoteric Region again in order to remove the Esoteric Region and grant yourself another buff called Genesiac Impetus. Now, Genesiac Impetus actually turns all of Kam'lanaut's attacks into very, very powerful versions of themselves, but there's a problem. So we'll scroll down just a little bit, just there. Effect is removed when broken, and Addle is part of Kam'lanaut's primary function, which is when he receives an attack, while he's got one of these buffs open, he'll respond by reducing their attack and magic attack further. So A, he needs to be targeted by your opponent. B, he needs to not be broken for it so he doesn't lose Genesiac Impetus and therefore lose his entire kit and you have to start from scratch. And it's messy. But the things he does get out of it are actually pretty good. So Frostblade gives him it's just a simple Brave HP attack that grants him a max Brave and attack frame buff, which is quite nice. But once you've got Genesiac Impetus active, it becomes a different attack called Glassification, which is a paralysis based attack. And then if you look at his passive abilities as well, you get you get Glassification plus once you've broken a target or you're attacking a broken target with his Brave attack plus, which then increases the rate of the paralysis. But as you can see from just me talking about it, it's you have to do A to get to B to get to C to get to D, and honestly D's not really worth the hassle. We haven't even got into his EX attack yet, but this is just a basic inclination of his kit. He's there to be kind of like Vincent in that his primary thing is reducing the attack power of your opponent's, just attacks and things like that. But equally, we've got Vayne coming up relatively soon, who does this in a much more simple fashion. He does just as much damage, if not more. It's a lot less complicated. His longevity is better. But Kam'lanaut is probably one of the weakest EXs. To be honest, in my last video where I was talking, or the March sort of overview video, I was actually really excited for Kam'lanaut because he's a villain and I want to have him for my villain collection. But that's because I quite honestly missed that line where it said that he can't be broken or he loses his effects. If he's broken, you have to start from the beginning all over again. And it's in the Age of Chaos, it's like, unless you're bringing, it's awkward because you don't want him to get broken, so therefore you want to bring somebody like Zac, so they want to attack him. But Kam'lanaut wants to be attacked, so it's kind of an oxymoron and doesn't really pan out the way you want it to. But that being said, we can have a look at his EX and see what that gives us. So now we can have a look at Kam'lanaut's EX attack, which is Great Wheel, which first thing I'm looking at is this slow recast rate, which is a little bit, it's not the greatest. But he also, one of the nice things about Great Wheel is it has a delay effect on it. This is just on the base level at 2 out of 3 limit break, which is kind of nice. It's at 100% HP damage to all targets, so it's also going to be a AoE delay, which is great. You get more Esoteric Region, more Genesiac Impetus, but you remove Esoteric Region to get Genesiac Impetus, and you can see where I'm going with this, and I hate the fact that he's as complicated as he is. If you have Genesiac Impetus, then it turns into a plus version of itself where it does more damage, and he also gets a party-wide max Brave and attack buff, which is nice. Having that is good. He also has in his Crystal level 68 another minor party aura, which means he's not completely selfish. So that's something to bear in mind. But then looking at his realization, his Great Wheel gets more Brave Overflow, which is useful. It raises his bravery after the damage is dealt, so it's harder to break him, which is something he needs. But he also doesn't have any kind of lock, which means that they're not going to be attacking him all the time. So there's that to bear in mind. When the quest starts, he starts with Charismatic Archduke and Esoteric Region, so it means it takes longer for him to get to Genesiac Impetus, which is good because the Genesiac Impetus is what you really, really need for him to go off. It's very, very similar to the Dollmaster mechanic of Lulu, but it can get removed like that, and that's a big no-no straight away. It's like you should not have to go into that much effort to get him to his maximum potential for it to just go, especially if your opponent is doing your party-wide attack and Kam'lanaut's not ready for it. There are a lot of situations where it can be really rough. But he also just gets, and even the 3 out of 3 isn't that great. It's just more damage. It raises the overflow limit a little bit, but it's not like splitting it up into multiple attacks. Admittedly, it is an 100% AoE damaged attack, which is very nice. But is it worth the trouble you go through to get to that point where you get, you could just use Cloud at this point. Cloud has a slow charging EX that does party-wide damage or enemy party-wide damage. He has a paralysis kit. He's also got the launch, which is, you know, similar to a delay. There's a lot more turn manipulation around Cloud, and Cloud was one of the first EXs to come out, or EX realizations to come out, so you have to ask yourself, is Kam'lanaut really worth the trouble? And in my honest opinion, the answer is no. His sphere is quite nice though. When his HP is max and he's breaking a target, still quite specific, it inflicts a 30% attack down for 6 turns, which is a long time, and you know, 30% is not anything to sniff at. So if you do happen to get Kam'lanaut, I wouldn't ingot him just for his sphere, but it is a good sphere. So that covers all 4 of the major characters being released with their EX realizations this week, and honestly, like, it's difficult to gauge exactly where your resources should go, because obviously if your favourite character is one of these 4 characters, then you should absolutely go for them. Get your tickets, get your gems, get your ingots, get your books, and just max out your favourite character, because there is more than enough variation in the teams that you can bring to hard content that you should be able to do so with your favourites. That being said, do I personally plan on pulling on either of these banners? Do I personally plan on maxing out any of the EXs I already have, etc.? Honestly, the answer here is going to be no. I already have Jecht EX, so I don't plan to max him out, because whatever books and ingots I have are going to be saved for next week, which is when Penelo comes around, and she takes precedence. I've just maxed out Yuri and Onion Knight, so those 2 have kind of taken precedence over these banners as well, but I don't think that Jecht is bad. I think that he is a worthwhile spend of your resources. I think that his damage is very, very strong, but I think he's very linear and he's very selfish. Lulu, on the other hand, I do think is a really good investment, particularly if you don't have any of the other Imperil characters. So Onion Knight, Yuri, examples. If you don't have those, then this banner is a lot more enticing. I think that you could spend some tickets to get Lulu if you wanted to, or if she's a favourite, obviously go all in. And if you are going to go for her, she is definitely somebody that wants 3 ingots, just like most characters. She's not very functional with just 0. She needs to get that damage. She needs to be able to keep up. She wants to be able to keep those. She wants to be able to get live as quickly as she can by having those stacks at the beginning of the quest, so she can just get into the damage as quickly as she can. Shantotto is a really cool character, and she is somebody that I've contemplated spending my EX tokens on, but then Lael is around the corner as well, and I think that honestly Lael is a better character, a better investment than Shantotto, and not in part because Shantotto comes back around again much later, but when she gets her limited weapon and her burst weapon, and therefore that's probably a much better time to pull for her, and she's on better banners than this one. Kam'lanaut, honestly, having properly read him and understood what he does, I wouldn't touch him with a barge pole. I think that there are 100 characters better than Kam'lanaut, which upsets me because he's a villain, and that makes me think I'm probably going to end up sinking some tickets into this banner anyway so that I can complete my collection. But honestly, I think that this week you want to move with trepidation. If you've already spent out for Yuri and Onion Knight, or you spent out anything last week, then you're going to want to wait until next week where we get Penelo, because she is a much greater investment when it comes to your gems and your tickets and your ingots. I think that she's definitely, and Edge as well is a certainly plausible consolation prize for Penelo, because he's actually pretty good too. And compared to like Shantotto is a victim of her banner. She's a decent character, but her banner mate is that rough and awkward, and you have to put a lot of work in to make him work, and you shouldn't have to do that in this day and age. Like, a character should be bringing something to you, not vice versa. And Lulu and Jecht, if you have neither EX, definitely a ticketable banner. I wouldn't go all in on this one because the next week is so important, and I personally prefer the Yuri and Onion Knight banner to the Jecht and Lulu one, but that's a personal preference. If you didn't pull for those 2, then this could be a decent banner to at least sink some resources on. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope that this has given you a little bit of information regarding the characters we can expect from Dissidia this week. Stay tuned for Friday, where I'll be covering various different Chaos missions as I did last Friday. So if you want to see some clears, some team composition, some alternative tactics, things like that, then do stay tuned for that. Subscribe to the channel, of course, and don't forget to like the video and to ring the bell for notifications for any future videos I have. And then obviously don't forget to follow all of my social media links, and check out Twitch as well if you want to see some stuff from Final Fantasy VII Remake. Anyways, thank you ever so much for joining me, and I will see you all next time. Take care!